Hello, everyone, and welcome to this 30-minute segment that we're going to do on collective superintelligence. And the theme, the topic, the focus is on the foundations, the foundational elements, a theoretical framework, if you will. And then you could kind of think of the analogy between theoretical physics on the one hand and applied mechanical engineering on the other. So if Twitter, Facebook, Clubhouse, whatever, Vibe Cafe, if these are all applied mechanical engineering, let's take a step back from that for a minute and go to the high level theoretical physics. And so I'm going to screen share and talk about what I have to talk about. Okay. So I started to develop sort of like a key of some of the foundational elements, if you
Or a legend, Jamin, a legend.
a legend, a legend in his own mind. So let's say that you have a dot represents, an individual, a person, right? And a conversation is represented by a circle. A cluster of dots could be a community. A platform could be a platform. This could represent like a link in the lower left here. These things here could be like a signal or a message, like a broadcast of a conversation. And then this dashed line of boundaries. So let's what might this look like here? So here, this circle here, this dark black circle is a conversation. These single dots, I might as well make them touching the circle, are people participating in the conversation. And then there's this boundary, this dashed line is a boundary. So people outside the boundary could be people watching or listening to the conversation, right? So far, so good? Okay. And there will be many other elements that will come up with, like, for example, I'll just draw a picture of like a scroll representing
Also, Jamin, that should be signal or noise or like signal to noise message or something.
that could well be. So imagine this scroll represents like a transcript of a conversation. We'll have to come up with something a bit more user-friendly than a scroll. Transcript of a conversation, and maybe we have another, maybe we do something that looks kind of like a movie camera representing like a video recording of a conversation. And maybe we have like an R2D2 like figure representing a bot or whatever, because bots are going to be a big deal in conversations, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll keep coming up with elements. And now let me scroll ahead to imagine the blue stuff here represents a whole kind of like a taxonomy of topics. And so these big fat lines like this one and this one represent kind of like the boundaries between, major topic groupings, like the environment or humanity or, culture or, history or science or whatever. So major topic groupings. And then these slightly thinner lines could be subtopic groupings. So this shaded area here is a subtopic grouping.
Jamin, may I raise my hand?
Yes, please.
So when I was studying complexity science with Dr. Strank, we would talk about this as like a weighted issue.
Yeah.
So I just want to like help you hurry your not hurry, but like I wanted to help you expedite this presentation. But so the thicker lines would be where communication flows more readily, right? It's like church where you know everyone or something versus going to a bar and meeting someone for a blind date, right? And the weighted lines allow for communication or information to disseminate at a flow factor, let's say. And I'm just making up words, but it allows for more information dissemination based on the thicker lines. And so if we look at what Jamin's got in front of us here, this could be a community map in terms of how information flows, and the thicker waterways are where, I don't know, the more robust or resilient groups are, essentially. But Jamin, go ahead. Sorry, I apologize.
No, that's okay. I think you're talking about something totally different, but it sounds fascinating, and we can talk about it later.
It's
I'm just
not
talking.
different, I promise you, Jamin. Go
Okay,
ahead.
okay,
Yeah.
it's exactly the same. Anyway, so that's great. So anyway, all this is a two-dimensional taxonomy of topics and subtopics and everything. So literally any little point, any little pixel on this whole map, represents, like a topic. But then as soon as you zoom in on that pixel, then it fractalizes, and so you can have as many divisions as you want, infinitely divisible. And then one of these green circles, like this one right here, you can see it spans 1, 2, 3 different significant topic regions, and there's nothing wrong with that. Any conversation can span multiple different topics, and so but they're not necessarily adjacent topics. So for example, you could have conversation number 7 spanning this topic space and this topic space and this topic space over here and this one over here, whatever. Okay, no problem. And so this is, I'm going to call this looking at plan view at the map, taxonomic map. Now let's look at elevation view. Okay, so imagine that each of these green boxes, right, represents a meeting, a conversation, okay? And imagine that the vertical, so like look at this vertical elevator, yellow elevator shaft, let's just call it like that, represents a series of conversations. So within this series, you have conversation number 1, conversation number 2, conversation number 3 in this series. And as you can see here on the left, the vertical dimension is time. And the gaps between these conversations are just like gaps in time when the conversation is not happening. The series of conversations is not happening. And so over time, you have, a next conversation and a next conversation, et cetera. And so this vertical on the left here, this one, represents one series of conversations. Here represents another series of conversations. And you can see these conversations are of shorter duration. It might just be a quick check-in. And it's, since it's at a different place on the map, as you can see up here, it's probably covering a different topic or a different set of topics or whatever.
Horizontal and vertical, right, Jamin?
What's that?
Horizontal and vertical, right? It's like scaffolding in different dimensions.
Yes. So vertical is the dimension of time. Horizontal is the dimension of topic space, but it's really a two-dimensional, as you can see here. So here's a plan view,
right? Yeah.
Elevation view. Yeah. And then, in general, my kind of mental model of the way things ought to be is we start with, there's like our whole topic space seen kind of on edge. And then I'm just going to draw these skyscrapers in green. In reality, it's, a series of conversations, so it's really chunked out, but just for quickness of sketching, and certain series of conversations, they might come to an end, right? Okay, this one's not happening anymore. It started off here, it happened in whatever series of conversations it happened, and then it came to an end. And so I kind of think of all these different little skyscrapers as separate conversations. But what's cool is we can also build sky bridges between two skyscrapers of conversations, and then build a new skyscraper starting from the middle of that sky bridge. And since vertical is the dimension of time, we might start a conversation here, just like literally right here in time. It starts here. They don't all have to start at t=0. What is t=0? We'll talk about that later. That's just some datum of time. It's kind of irrelevant because you can always go backward in time and whatnot. And so you've got all the, so I just sort of think of this as this Manhattan skyline of conversations on top of a two-dimensional substrate, but there's no reason that has to be limited to 2 dimensions. It could be an n-dimensional topic space. Probably the more dimensions, the better, but it makes it harder.
I think it's supposed to be the nth dimensional, right? Like nth.
Sounds good to me. So nth, nth dimensional. But anyway, so you got topic space and you got this growing Manhattan skyline of conversations, and with sky bridges and all kinds of stuff. So like the sky bridge really means like, hey, maybe this new skyscraper here in the middle represents to some extent a mashup between the conversations to the left and to the right of it. Like, hey, we realize we're on parallel tracks. We're talking about global warming and its solutions from slightly different angles. Let's get together and do a mashup. And of course, you know, there's no limit to the number of skyscrapers that can contribute to that kind of a mashup. So in plan view, we might have all these different skyscrapers, each doing their own thing. And then they say, hey, you know, let's get together, let's meet in the middle and start, you know, yet another conversation here. That and if that doesn't work out, we can all go back to our original skyscrapers or whatever. And in fact, look at this now, shifting gears here because I'm talking kind of quickly. Imagine that this red line here represents the path of a person, right, in this conversation space. So this person may start over here in this conversation here, and then, oh, there's not going to be another conversation for 2 weeks. Well, let me meander over here and hang out in this conversation, and then this other conversation, and then back to this one, and then I'll do nothing for a couple days waiting for the next conversation, and then I'll be here, and then I'll go back over here when this one finally reconvenes. And, you know, so the red line is literally the path of a person, right, in this conversational realm, right? That's super interesting for a whole bunch of reasons, because then if a person chooses to make their path public, they can be followed. Oh my goodness, Noam Chomsky is going to be in a conversation about, you know, politics in the Middle East. Oh, great, I'm going to go there. And oh, I can't get into that meeting room, but I can watch it. Okay, fine, I'll watch it. Oh, is there a way for me to post comments? Great. And then the comments, of course, would be like this signal or message that we've got over here. You know, there's all kinds of different forms of signaling. What the heck just happened? Oh, okay. All right. Now, another point I want to make is when a conversation starts, let's consider the start of a given conversation, like this one right here on the left. So just consider the concept of a foundation for that conversation. And there could be many layers of that foundation, right? One of them could be, you know, a Wikipedia article on a certain topic. Another one could be a YouTube video, right? Another one could be a textbook. Another one could be an interview with, you know, Jordan Peterson or, you know, whatever. Anyway, so there's all these different artifacts, informational artifacts. And the agreement could be, hey, when we get together to do conversation number 1 in this skyscraper, what will be a series of conversations, let's divvy it up. Hey, Mike, could you watch that YouTube video? And Marco, could you read that Wikipedia article and have it?
Which one did you talk about?
Which what?
The video, sorry, or were you just making a statement? Or were you asking me a question? Or
No,
yeah,
I'm making a statement as a hypothetical scenario where I ask Mike to.
No, understood.
Okay, yeah. Anyway, and then that way, when we get together to have our meeting, conversation number 1 in this series, of which there'll be 2, 3, 4, whatever, we all come to this meeting each of us bringing whatever artifacts that we agreed to have studied beforehand, and then we can sort of represent those artifacts. And that represents a foundation for that skyscraper, right? And then speaking of foundational elements, like let's say this conversation here that I talked about earlier comes to an end. When it comes to an end, the whole transcript of that conversation and the video recordings and everything in turn can represent a foundation for yet another conversation that may start weeks later and take off from there. So it can reference, boop, this foundation, or it can reference a whole conversation. It can reference multiple conversations. So there's kind of no end to all this. Now, why? What's the point of all this? Well, I've been, doing a fair amount of thinking, as all of us have, about, what kind of system could we put together? And I'll get off screen share here. What kind of system could we put together to facilitate collective superintelligence? Well, we want to, we talked about having a map of all the different conversations. Well, we might have a map that can have different views: plan view, elevation view, et cetera, et cetera. And all these transcripts could go into a database that's then searchable, and we might have other elements of the system that, AI that does, word frequency analysis on the different conversations and identifies which conversations are similar and which might consider getting together. Or, what does it mean to get together? Well, you could build a SkyBridge and do a mashup conversation where we all get together and do a big mashup where
SkyBridge needs to be something that we focus on too, Jamin. SkyBridge is a good one. That's amazing.
Yeah, totally. And so, but where I'm going with all this is, see, since we're talking about systems, we could, get ahead of ourselves and say, let's do a system where we can do this and this, and okay, great, I'll build this and we'll build that. Now, that's what I call, and by the analogy I was talking about earlier, applied mechanical engineering. But there's a place for theoretical physics. And I think that if we start with theoretical physics, we start with the theory and the element of collective superintelligence, then we might be able to create advanced materials that we wouldn't have come up with if we were just banging rocks together in some kind of applied alchemy.
Right. Or like sharpening flint, or like knapping, or whatever, like K knapping. Yeah.
Exactly. So what I'm actually suggesting is that both happen in parallel, like a double helix. You've got the evolution of the theory of collective intelligence, collective superintelligence being an evolution of collective intelligence. But you've got the theory of collective intelligence. What are the elements? What are the relationships? What are the thread? Like this thread of a path of a person.
Like starting conditions. Yeah.
Well, there's starting conditions. Well, yeah, and then.
Well, no, right now, like one of my old professors, Dr. Strink, would say, since we're recording, if anyone wants to look her up, she is one of my mentors that raised me. But she would say starting conditions are like this conversation right now. We're elucidating the variables that are going to allow us to grow forward together.
Exactly. And see, the reality is this conversation is a mashup of so many others, yours with your professor and me remembering all my physics courses that I took in college and engineering courses and everything. So what we're talking about is kind of creating like a theoretical mapping, a key. Let's create.
It's Marco and I actually talked about this recently, but it's like the topography of the map, right? We're like laying, we're the forerunners of the map makers. It's like Lewis and Clark territory, Jamin.
Exactly. And then as we start to map out the periodic table, if you will, of all the different elements of collective intelligence.
Absolutely.
Then over in the more applied mechanical engineering realm, they can say, well, let's take these different elements and put them together into a widget called this. And then that's one of the elements of the mechanical system of an actual system of collective intelligence, like Twitter or whatever. And then we can also use this knowledge to say, for example, figure out, hey, what could we use Twitter for in collective superintelligence? Having mapped out the theory, we can practically apply this with this and this, with Twitter Spaces and with tweets themselves, which is this advanced messaging system, and et cetera, et cetera. But we can't do this or this or this with Twitter. So maybe we mash up Twitter with Facebook, with Vibe Cafe, with some AI bots, and we cobble together from off the shelf.
I didn't want to make you lose your thread there, by the way, Jamin. You were on a roll, so I apologize if I interrupted you.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Don't worry about it. And we're just getting started here. But I'm really, so I'm envisioning a coevolution of the theory. Like theoretical physics didn't stop in 1945 with the development of the atom bomb. I mean, it was just getting started. And now we've got quarks and string theory and unifying the four forces of physics and all kinds of cool stuff like that. So the elements, the periodic table will keep growing of elements of collective intelligence. And then there will be a parallel evolution of the systems of collective intelligence. And that's how it should be. I mean, whenever like a system starts to break down or run into some weird imaginary boundaries, we can say, well, let's go back to the chalkboard and go back to theory. What are we missing here? Or what are we, misusing from the elements, or which elements have we forgotten that we need to reincorporate? And so, as
I really liked the I guess we'll call it the cognitive periodic table or something. Like there's a working, there's a draft name there. But yeah, Jamin, you nailed
it. Exactly. So, and I kind of like, so I want to jam more on Tuesday on all the above. So whenever you have time on,
of course,
Tuesday, let's get together and go deep on this. But I'll publish.
I'm ready for it.
I'll publish this in the meantime, and other people can watch it and submit their comments. And comments welcome in the YouTube video. And let's continue to develop the theoretical framework, and then also staying in the realm of theory and just imagining. We can imagine all kinds of cool stuff. And once we
we obviously you Marco and I know that we want to marry the practical with the theoretical, right? Like, it's someone's got to lay the bricks, and we also have to have these ideas. Yeah, no, I love you guys. Honestly, this is my Christmas gift right now, is having this conversation tonight. No, I appreciate you both so much. That's
why I literally wanted to do this on Christmas Eve, and I'll publish it. This is like a
Christmas absolutely
gift from the realm of collective intelligence. Yeah, exactly. And so
I love you guys.
These things co-evolving, so there can be whole groups that are just in the ivory tower, just working on the pure theory of collective intelligence. Like they actually hate people and hate being in real conversations or whatever. But they're just working on the theory. They hate the world. They hate it. Oh, screw that.
That doesn't sound very fun, Jamin. That doesn't sound very fun.
I'm just kidding. And then other people are just going to be.
No. I mean, you and Marco and I are having fun, but like that version, the ivory tower, that doesn't sound very fun.
But all I'm saying is different strokes for different folks. Different people will be coming up with different things. Like coders will just give me something to code. I don't give a shit about the theory.
Oh, we're on the cusp. Obviously, the three of us know this. We're on the cusp of this, right? We're so close.
Yeah, and I want to bring some of this stuff, or all this stuff, to our next podcast as well. And in fact, I'll just say, hey, please watch this 30-minute video before the podcast, so you have an idea of all that. But then,
well, for anyone who comes later, hold on, Jamin. For anyone who comes later, if you've made it this far, I think that is a time for self-reflection and self-awareness and self-esteem. Self-esteem is a very important one for me. Yeah, right. Not even just for me, but like just the idea that no, we're all capable, competent, and we can be confident as well.
And complicated. Exactly. So
yeah. Well, that's a given, right?
That's a given.
Yeah, that's a given. Complicated is a given.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like we've got all these elements for collective superintelligence. They already exist. And we just have to put them all together. And as we work on theory, then other people are working on the practical application. And in terms of practical application, we've got these super powerful, free, ubiquitous systems like Twitter, with Twitter Spaces, and this, and that, and the other. And
Facebook, or Discord, or Facebook Lives, or whatever else. We're going to conquer it all. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's kind of like Henry Ford. It wasn't like Henry Ford had his own blast furnace in the back making his own steel. No, he was buying and using all these off the shelf
Yes.
ball bearings, gear systems, pulleys, whatever's.
The catalyst for that, actually, since this is recorded, but I just want anyone who listens to this in the future to think about this. The catalyst for that emergent property, or like a change there, was the rubber tree, right?
Well,
Well,
yeah.
rubber, and then
Go ahead, Margo. You got me.
vulcanization.
Yeah,
Sure.
vulcanization.
Yeah, you got me.
Vulcanization.
Yeah,
And we're
thank you,
flying
thank
the
you.
Vulcan mind meld here. None of this is an accident. None of this is an accident.
I knew you were good.
I love you guys.
Oh,
Thank
heck
you,
yeah,
Marco.
great. Yeah. So, and then from vulcanization came steel belted radials, you know, the mashup between rubber and steel, those elements coming together, you know, created massive durability for tires that was unheard of prior to those developments.
Where the rubber meets the road. Me and Marco have already talked about this before. Marco and I have talked about this before. Yeah, where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah. So anyway, but like from the highest level, I mean, like, you know, the last couple of podcasts we've been talking about, okay, let's get together and build this thing and actually do this. Great. What I'm saying is, listen, before we set about building or even cobbling together, let's do it right. Let's really take stock of all the elements, including, you know, man-made elements like, you know, transcription. You know, that didn't exist 50 years ago. Now we've got it, and it's highly advanced and accurate and everything. So
it's akin to the printing press or something, or akin to agriculture, let's say.
Exactly.
Yeah, it doesn't really, or the steam engine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the back and forth, because then out of practice, putting these things into practice and building actual systems will emerge new nuggets, new components, which can be part of the theoretical framework, because those can be used in ways unimaginable to the first practitioners who built it just to be a component of Twitter. Oh, but now it can be used over here in this other way and all that. So let's really go crazy on cooking all this up, coming up with well, it's never going to be complete because it's always going to be expanding. The theoretical framework.
I consent, Jamin. I consent to jam. Let's jam. I consent. Awesome.
All right. Well, it's 4:44 here, and I've got to get going. So I can either leave it recording, or maybe I'll just wrap up this recording. You guys can always
turn off the no, hold on. Wrap it up nicely, end the recording, and then I actually do want to like say hi to you and Marco off recording, if you will. But this is a nice bookend. I think we made a good one here. But yeah, go ahead.
I will wrap it up nicely. What's up, collective intelligence? Okay, that's me wrapping it up nicely.
We can't. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
All right. Love you all, and we'll see you next time. Merry Christmas, and stopping the recording.